fail. It's not a disaster.
Will AI replace us?
I think we see a lot of changes where we didn't expect them to happen. That the data science and AI team doesn't need to be a cost center, it needs to be a profit center. I know the fastest way to get my money out of the bank is not to rob it. You sit down and you do your homework and you learn. You will also be superseded and redundant in the future.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the CE Interim Leadership Podcast, where we discuss transformation, strategies, and operational implementation across the world's most vibrant regions. Today, I'm happy and honored to have a very special guest with me, Dr. Eva-Maria Müller-Stuler. She's a well-recognized data scientist, and I have to read it to do it properly. One of the top 10 most influential women in technology in 2021, top woman in AI in 2020. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Bohuslav.
It's really a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
The stage is yours. Tell us a little bit about you.
So I've been working in AI most of my life. I'm a mathematician by background, with a combination of business and computer science. At the time I went to university, everybody was like, makes no sense. Why combining these subjects? And it was very funny because there's a saying, you can't connect the dots going forwards and only going backwards. And going backwards is actually made a lot of sense because with a lot of data science and the IP we developed over the years, the background is hardcore mathematics. But you need coding skills and you need to understand how businesses work to actually put it together. So I set up Europe's first data science and AI team a long time ago in consulting at KPMG. And I came to this region 7.5 years ago to transform IBM and how they see data and AI.
Okay, perfect. Good. So let's go straight into it. AGI. What's the role of AGI?
It's going to be extremely interesting to see. At the beginning, I remember giving talks in 2017 that I actually don't think Terminator will be the biggest threat to society. We then said, we're 20 years away from it. Then it was 10 years. And actually, recently in December, I was at a conference where one of the speakers from a famous university said, he only gives it 3 years, and he thinks there's a 30% of probability of humanity being extinct when it takes over. So the time frame is getting shorter and shorter. The risk is getting higher and higher. And while it was previously seen as a very abstract, very unlikely scenario, we do see a huge impact on AI on society, and the question about AGI coming faster and faster. And we still don't have any plans how to react to it. We don't have any government's agreement and so on. So we as a society and as governments, we need to prepare for it.
So are we just scratching the surface?
Yes, I think we are still scratching the surface. We saw absolutely exponential growth in AI over the past years, and it's only getting faster. If you listen to AI news, every morning you're like, oh wow, and that just happened overnight again and again. So with the launch of ChatGPT a few years back, it really triggered off the international awareness. It triggers off the international investment and research and everything. So yeah, it's here to stay. It's coming more and more into our society, and we see massive surprises and massive changes in the future.
Okay. So now let's go a little bit from the future to the present into a more traditional environment, and that's family offices and private equity firms here in the Middle East, or especially in Dubai. You helped a lot of them already during your consulting times. How do you bring a traditional family office into the AI world?
It's actually a surprise that they, even though they are often investing in tech and come from quant backgrounds and so on, that they're actually so slow in the adoption of AI. I would have expected them to be one of the leaders, but actually the way they operate and how they restructure their investment and so on are often not 100% linked to AI transformations. So when we look at PE houses, they have basically three big things to focus on. First of all, how do they operate themselves, like their knowledge management? How do they pick the right investment? How do they do their due diligence and forecasting? How do they pick trends in the market up and so on? So a lot of that can now be AI enabled and Gen AI driven. But also then, so the whole pre-deal assessment of what to invest in, where's a company now compared to the market, and then the post-deal of how do we generate value in that market, in that company, in our investment, how can we turn that around? So even though there are basically three main pillars they have to focus on and really to stay ahead of the market, it's more than urgent now to think about it. I'm still surprised by how slow a lot of the PE houses are on the uptake.
Okay. If we talk about slow and quick, you are a German, you worked in Eastern Europe, now we're sitting in Dubai, and I've lived in Germany as well. I come from Eastern Europe. How would you compare the environment in AI and digital in Europe versus in Dubai?
And so about 15 years ago, I set up my first AI team actually while I was in London. I had my team in the Czech Republic because it was easy to find a lot of really smart people there for a good price. People with a PhD in mathematics who can code and so on and really develop new concepts. It is very forward-thinking, very entrepreneurial, really about removing boundaries. And that's one of the things I also see in Dubai. There is a huge market and a huge drive for, can we change this? Can we go paperless? Can we do this smarter? Can we improve services? And that is the drive and the energy into change and moving things forward, I think is something that these countries have very much in common.
Why do you think this is so, that the Eastern European countries have this drive and urgency as here we see in Dubai?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think probably because of a very young, driven, younger generation that is enabled to actually change things, that are allowed to change these views and are more happy to try and risk something. While I think in Western Europe, we're more worried about failing than about trying.
Exactly. Europe is very much risk averse.
Yeah.
And as I said, me coming from Eastern Europe, if we look 40 years back, there wasn't a scenario like this.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Eastern Europe.
Exactly.
40 years ago, the market and environment was completely different. So I think that's what unites Eastern Europe, or what is similar in Eastern Europe and here in Dubai. It's the past, where we are coming from.
Yeah.
Where the Western Europe, they're more in a comfort zone. Why should we go the risk, etc.?
Exactly. And it's like more we are too worried about losing something and being bad. While people here, they remember Dubai 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, and they're like, it wasn't bad. And same in Eastern Europe. So if you fail, it's not a disaster.
Yes.
You just try again. While in Western Europe, it's like, oh my God, I don't know what's gonna happen if I fail.
Okay, let's turn failure into opportunities, and that's exactly what interim managers do. Where do you see the role of interim managers in AI, AGI transformations?
I think that pretty much every company needs to transform. We've been talking about digital transformation for the last 10 years, but now we really need to be focusing on AI transformation, and the digital transformation is only a building block in the AI transformation. But we have to put the AI transformation and the possibilities of what we can do with AI at the forefront. It is often difficult for a company to do that change out of themselves. And an interim manager would have the experience from other companies. So they would bring in a lot of knowledge, but they also be not seen as an internal threat to somebody. They're more like a sparring partner, a knowledge partner, who says, actually, I've seen this being really successful. Why don't we try this? And being external to the company, it's often easier for them to start something new and influence something new because they're outside the politics.
Can a CEO, a permanent CEO or HR, hire a good AI person to lead the transformation, like an internal employee?
It'd be difficult because an internal employee has their connections and their network, and people see them a certain way, and everyone's like, oh no, we don't want them from the IT team, or we don't want them from the cyber team, and so on. So because they're already in the company, they have their lobby and they have their adversaries, and so it will always difficult to change the whole company. And the people change is the hardest bit. The other big problem is we don't know what we don't know. And what I've seen very often is if you don't know what an AI officer looks like, it'd be hard. You can ask ChatGPT to write a job description. But how do you assess the quality of a person in a job interview? If you're the one, or if you're the blind, it's trying to interview seeing people. I often say it's a bit like a lion trying to assess the flying abilities of eagles. It's not their competency, so they can't tell which eagle is higher, if the big eagle is higher or lower than the small eagle. So I often see the wrong people in these positions because they didn't know what to assess and what was quality.
So what is the biggest hurdle you experienced in your past experience that family offices or companies have to overcome in order to transform themselves?
It's a cultural change. It's a cultural change from the CEO down to the assistant. Or because there are so many little things. For example, how we use Microsoft is going to change completely because of Copilot. I myself started dictating most of my emails because the dictations actually work now. And it saves me a lot of time. Or I say, just put in bullet points and let the email write itself. It's normally far too long. And then I go like, no, half as long. But you are able to, on all levels, the scheduling of meetings and so on, to complete transformations and predicting and hiring and so on. And this change needs to be led by a willingness of the CEO and really bring the people along. And HR needs to enable people and give them time to learn and retrain and understand that it's a difficult transition period for all the employees. And it's a lot of insecurities for all the employees because we still constantly are getting asked, will AI replace me? So really making sure that you keep the good people, that you adjust and change is a big challenge for everyone.
We see the question every day now. Will AI replace me? Will AI replace us? Will AI replace recruiters? Will AI replace the interim? Because AI can screen the CVs. So will AI replace us?
I think we see a lot of changes where we didn't expect them to happen. We thought that the last people who will be unsafe would be the coders. Obviously, we develop AI, and now we have so many tools that help us coding, where you could just say, I want to build this and this and this, and they produce a whole code for you in
Seconds.
In seconds, which would take you a month to code, and then do error handling and suggest on how to do things better. And it's already in the coding software. Like if you use Visual Studio, it's Microsoft telling you how to do things. So will it replace us? No, because we still have the people with the ideas. We still have the people who lead the AI in the right direction. especially large language models, they are not error-free. They do hallucinate. So more than ever, you need critical thinking and saying, no, the fastest way to get my money into out of the bank is not to rob it. It's actually to wait until it's open, or to call the call center. And so this security layers and the knowledge of how to apply it will still be needed. We always thought that the first thing we're gonna get rid of is driverless cars, drivers, and still we don't see many of them around. In San Francisco now they have driverless taxis, but it's much slower than we actually thought it will happen. So we see a shift. We definitely see a shift in skill sets, but it will be the people who adjust, and that's, I think, the biggest challenge for all of us in the future, to adjust and learn. In the past, when we finished university, our learning was done, and we just did exactly the same job for 60 years. These days are over.
Okay, very, very interesting. So that brings me to my next question, and a very interesting topic. What will be the impact of generative AI on society?
Ooh, we don't know that. And we mentioned before that I was at a conference in Paris in December, where they said it's 30% probability that humanity will be extinct in the next 3 years. And I joked and I was like, okay, guys, I'm going shopping. I've got money to spend now. And I do think we need clear regulatory frameworks, especially on fake AI and fake news. A lot of people have lost the trust in governments, the trust in news, because so much information is artificially generated. It's nearly impossible for every one of us to say this is right and this is wrong, this is reality and this is not. Everybody starts to question reality. So we need to find ways on targeting that and saying, okay, no, we need to make sure that legally fake AI and fake videos are labeled and controlled, that you know that it's AI generated and it's not a real video, or they use AI to enhance it or something like that. We see a strong threat for our governments on fake videos, fake news, and it's difficult for the governments to build trust. It also on who to trust themselves, because who can they trust on the AI side if they don't know if they're gonna take my pictures out to do something dodgy with it. So we will see massive changes, and I hope for the better, but we actually don't know that at the moment. It could go right. It could also go terribly wrong.
So we better spend the money we have quickly and enjoy the life.
Always, but after today, I'm not so sure on the stock market.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yes, there's been some news yesterday. I checked it as well. Then tomorrow, the news was ChatGPT introduced his image generator.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we are talking about. I uploaded a picture of myself from yesterday's beach. It's like, generate an image. I'm sitting in a meeting and 10 seconds and it was there.
Yeah.
So because it's gonna have impact. Yes. So what you're telling that there is a need for a regulation.
Yes, absolutely. There is always this thought of regulation hinders innovation. And I actually disagree with it, because nobody would go on an airplane without knowing that it's safe. So, and having a strong regulated aviation laws and saying, okay, no, if you fly with our air company, you are going to survive the flight. That is good for the aviation industry. And exactly the same is true for AI. We need to be able to trust AI, that it's accurate, that it's not biased, that it's not, that it is transparent, that it is explainable, and so on, because you wouldn't run your business blind. You would need to trust the AI and you want to trust your employees. So having clear legal frameworks actually then enables you to say, if I invest 100 million into that company, I will not end up in the news for being evil and lose my brand name. I can trust that there's trusted and ethical AI in there. I can trust if I make a decision on closing this branch and opening this branch, that there is proper knowledge and AI and data science built behind it that works, and it's not just a guess in the dark.
You've been dealing with data science, big data, digital transformation, AI, past your whole career. What do you expect to happen in the next 10 years? How will the world look like in 10 years? What do you think?
So we see a lot of automation of tasks we don't want to see. That's the first thing that people focus on. What are the low-hanging fruits?
Mm-hmm.
So how can I make decisions better, faster, cheaper, and really speeding up the game? I think we will see a complete shift in companies out there. I expect a lot of the big brands to actually disappear, with companies that nobody ever heard of taking over the market because they were just faster, more innovative, and so on. I see I see the whole knowledge market already transferring, like education and so on, because when in the past when you googled something and you'd say, what is the best microphone to buy, like a long time ago, it would give you articles and reviews about microphones. Now it just gives you the sponsored links and advertising, and it doesn't go into technical details anymore. So 2 years, 3 years ago, we actually said Google is broken, and now if you'll ask the large language models and say what would be the best, they would actually explain you what, like, depends on how you use it. If you want it for interviews, if you want it for rock concerts, this is what, and they would talk you through the process. So we're actually getting from to a knowledge extraction out of the information that we have. And that would be amazing for universities, for students, for onboarding at companies, for training. But we need to handle a way to handle the hallucination and manage the risk, and saying you do need to question if it's right. And so I think critical thinking will become more and more important for employees now, challenging questions and saying, I found this, but is it actually correct? Let's ask again. Because one of the big cases when ChatGPT came out was a lawyer doing his whole law case and saying ChatGPT said this, and then they lost it, and they were like, oh, but and they found out he just copied and pasted, and some of it was wrong. It wasn't even applicable in US law. So having this education there on saying what can we use it for and what can't we use it for, that is something we will change.
So people will still be necessary.
Yes, always, and if it's just for entertainment.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. In the recent months, let's say, we see a very, very increased demand for AI, digital transformation, for interim managers with these qualifications and experience. And you talked that the knowledge base and education and profiles will change and are different. And many, many people do not know now how does a profile of an AI transformation manager look like. So if you were a CEO or a family office manager looking for an AI transformation interim manager or a consultant to lead your transformation, how would the CV look like? What you will be looking for?
I love that question, because in the past we always used to say, oh, there isn't enough skill set in the market. And people would always say, oh, it's not enough young people who can code. I'm like, no, they're all there. You just have to train them on the use cases and so on. It's not that there's a lack of skill set. There is a lack of understanding in HR what is good.
Okay.
There was always a lack of understanding on how to get the good people and bring them through the recruitment process quickly. Because sometimes recruitment took a year, and by that time, a graduate has already done 3 jobs. nowadays. So and when you look for, but where I always saw the biggest gap was in the experienced people. So the juniors we can find, the juniors we can train, but actually finding somebody to on a senior level to run your company, that is what is um yeah is most needed. And we see it in the numbers. It's like 90% of all chief AI officers, they fail in their first year. Because they underestimate the cultural change, they underestimate the stakeholder input that they need, and they also underestimate that a data science and AI team doesn't need to be a cost center, it needs to be a profit center. So they need to be very, very clear on this. This is how much money we actually made for the company. This is the ROI of our work, of our projects. And what I would look for is a AI restructuring director or transformation director who understands that it's more than technology, that it needs a clear ROI calculations on the projects and how to do that, how to build the right strategy. And then I would always take someone who has the battle scars, who can code and comes not out of a business background, but actually out of an IT background. Because for the business background, you often don't know how complicated something is. And also it's a cultural difference. I know that a lot of scientists don't take the business people as leaders serious. So when you can go in there and say, no, let's talk tech, that is something that is very important for the technical teams, that it's one of them.
And that brings me to my next question. The shift in the mindset and the need to bring people on board. Let's say everyone can buy a new server or code something, but there is a shift in what is needed for a successful transformation. Historically, if I imagine IT people, those were people those are male people sitting in a dark room without windows, coding or doing some strange stuff very few people understood and had transparency. What is the role of women in the future in AI transformation? You're one of the most respected data scientists and a top woman in AI. What is the role of women?
We need diversity overall, not just women. We're the biggest diversity group. We said 50% of the population, so I always smile that we are actually seen as a diversity and not as 50%. But it's if you build something in AI and you don't have a diverse team, you are blind to your biases. We saw a lot of early IT developed. Siri at the beginning wasn't reacting to female voices. I've been sexually harassed by robots here. When I asked them to tell a joke, they made fun about women, and you're kind of like, how do you think that's possible? Because the whole coding team was male, and they thought it's a very funny joke. We saw a lot of like black people realizing that image recognition just doesn't work for darker skin, because it was all white males. And unless you come from one of the underrepresented minorities, you don't see that it doesn't work. And underrepresented minority could be you wearing glasses. You're over 60. We used to call everyone over 65 the silent generation. But there is so much money in the market of people over 65 that it's actually very expensive to say we don't care about them, they're silent. Every 65-year, 70, 80-year-old I know now has a mobile phone. So we have data about them. They're not silent anymore. So build solutions that work for them. So I think that diversity is extremely important for the teams to mitigate the bias, and to make sure that the software works for everybody.
Okay, very, very interesting. Now, if you were we've been with that question already, but I ask a new one. If you were a CEO, would you go for an internal or an external implementation?
Probably a hybrid model. To set it all up, I think you need external to basically help you hiring the first person. Your first hire you can't find them if you don't know if the answer they give you makes sense or not. If you don't know anything about coding, they can make up things. Say, oh yeah, no, I always code in, I don't know, Unicorn, and you be like, oh, I never heard of it. And like, oh, it's the best programming language ever. If you don't know coding, you don't know if it's right or wrong. So I think at the beginning, it really helps to get the outside expertise. Somebody who helps you setting up the Center of Excellence for Data and AI as a embedded into which area in the company, or if you go for a hybrid model, or if you have a Center of Excellence for your sales, for your back office, for your front office, and really understanding what are the pros and cons of the different setups. What are the skills that you need? An interims manager really helps you to speed things up. And you can buy a lot of expertise and basically hit the ground running. In the long run, I would probably say, you know what, with that expertise, slowly bring it in-house. You don't want the interims manager to stay forever. He probably doesn't, or she doesn't want to stay forever there anyway. And bring it in-house, build your own people, and somebody who's really aligned with your company values and associated with your company. And that will also reduce the cost in the long run. But to hit the ground running, it's faster if you get the successful teams in. Yeah.
Outside support. Okay. For many people, it's still very hard to imagine what AI is, or what you do actually now as an AI personality, as an AI transformation leader. So maybe you could share one of the projects or events that surprised you the most in your career.
Oh, that's a really good question. So, God, there were a lot of very, very surprising projects, especially in the early stages, because I started working in AI before GDPR. And so we were building a huge database where we just connected everything, every data we could find. Nobody saw any value in data. So we called one of the world's biggest telephone companies and said, can we have all your data? And they were just like, how? And we're like, you're going to send somebody over with flash drives. And we just got all their data. We were sitting there for 3 days and we're like, wow, we know everybody who made any phone calls in the UK. We don't need to build any models. We can just blackmail people. We just need to filter and say who stayed in a hotel closer than 5 kilometers to their home. And you know, and we go like, you know what? There's $80,000. It's cheaper than getting divorced. And so I think the complete missing of an understanding what the data had a value back then. We could have asked them, can we come and empty your bins? And they would be like, yeah, okay, we leave the key outside. We had companies when we came and said we're doing data science with you and so on. They were like, okay, you take my computer, we leave the room. And we were like, no, please stay. Okay. We can't just take everything from your computer. And they were like, oh, you're not just taking a copy of my computer. And we're like, no, we want this and this and this data. So I think, but then what I find really interesting was the certain drivers that drive human behaviors, that you can tell a good guy from his and hers behavior on your credit card. So for example, with credit card fraud, the first thing that every bad person does is they don't touch it for a moment. Then they go and buy something cheap like a chewing gum to see if it works. And then they go and buy the flat screen TV and hit it hard. And you're the saying "birds of a feather stick together" is very true in data and AI. You can see on behavioral patterns if a person is a good person or a bad person. That goes with so many little things. The speed they move their mouse tells you the intention on the internet. And what I also find very surprising was, for example, crime rates, especially in the UK. high pickpocketing crime rates actually means it's an expensive area, because you wouldn't go pickpocketing in an area where people have no money in the pocket. So that might actually be a really good sign for an expensive brand to open a luxury shop, because you say, okay, this is actually an area where a lot of people with lots of money go past. The criminals have already picked it up. Why don't you open your luxury shop there? So this really understanding what triggers human behavior is what I find the most interesting. I can go into use cases as well, but I also, that was one of the things that also got me into AI ethics. Because back in the days we said we don't use race or religion as an indicator if somebody is male or female, or on if they should get a credit and so on. We kind of thought like, that's fine, then we're not biased. But actually there are so many other signals that you can pick up if somebody is male or female, or if your model is biased, that just saying we remove these two features is not enough.
It's useless.
And you can just work around it and say, you know what, we make a difference between people who buy more than 7 pairs of shoes a year and less than 7 pairs of shoes, and then we know it's male or female. And so I think there's really understanding how you can understand human behavior and change it and influence it when you can measure it with the knowledge about data. That is what surprised me the most at the beginning.
Okay, super. Now let's go back to yesterday, where the comet hit the Earth, the Liberation Day. And so far we don't know what really happened, but we know not everything will stay the same. No? The companies must transform. They will have to adapt to new market environments, to new geopolitics, to the growing role of AI, coming AGI, etc. What would be your recommendation to company CEOs today who are thinking about starting an AI transformation in their company?
Get someone in who has done it before and who understands your industry and who also understands technology. See where you are now and where you want to go, and get somebody to help you hold your hand along the path. Because not everybody needs to become an OpenAI or a Microsoft and the completely AI company. But you do need to have a clear AI strategy on saying, where do I start now? What are the things I can grow with slowly and build out certain use cases? And what are the projects I'm going to keep for the long run? So you need to have a clear roadmap that is achievable. You need to have good data. You need to have a clear MLOps framework and so on. You need to have a CEO and know where to place it. So you need to have somebody with the experience to guide you along. And you also need to make sure that everyone in the company needs to upskill and reskill and train and retrain, and that includes the CEO. Nobody can run businesses as they used to, because unless you sit down and you do your homework and you learn, you will also be superseded and redundant in the future. And you need to learn what you need for the transformation, because otherwise you're too dependent on your advisor. You need to be able to challenge your advisor as well and understand what they're talking about.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Eva. It's been a pleasure and a fun talking to you. See you next time soon.
Thank you so much, Bohuslav.
Thank you.